Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be continuing our exploration of e4, e5, and more importantly, we're going to be continuing our exploration of the four knights defense going into the main line, and today we're going to be exclusively focusing on the so-called Rubenstein variation, also known as the Rubenstein Countergambit, which has been known to equalize in this line for over 100 years. So before we go any further, if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and please click on your notification icon. It's that little bell thingy. So anyways, knight d4 is called the Rubenstein variation. And when you play the Rubenstein variation, you have to deal with a lot of possible responses, even just within this position. So for starters, how can we get away with this move knight d4 in the first place? It seems a little illogical. We're moving the same piece twice in the opening. Isn't this a beginner's mistake? Yes, it is. But at the same time, we are actually taking advantage of the fact that he moved his bishop to b5, and when we move our knight to d4, we are threatening to capture that bishop pair. Because of that, it almost entices white to spend another move to move that bishop again, in which case we have gotten our knight to a slightly better square, free of losing any tempo. So we've played the same piece twice in the opening, knight c6 to d4, but we're hoping that white will have to do the same. That white's going to play bishop to b5 and then maybe bishop back to c4 or bishop back to a4 respectively. And that we have gained more space and a more important position for our knight than they have done with their bishop in the two moves that they spent moving their bishop. Anyways, that was an oversimplified, long-winded explanation, but in this position, there are a lot of options. There's the two bishop retreats, bishop c4 and bishop a4 as discussed, but there's also all the central captures. There's knight takes e5, there's knight takes d4, and then of course there's just ignoring everything and saying black is dumb for wasting his tempo and just castling and pretending like nothing happened at all. So let's go over these ideas one at a time. So the first question is, of course, what if they just take our pawn? What if they just say, this is totally unsound, you dropped your pawn, I'm going to take it? Well, this isn't terribly well respected. Queen e7 is pretty well known to just equalize pretty easily. After f4, we can go ahead and take that bishop pair, and after knight takes, we're just going to go ahead and play pawn to d6. This gets us the pawn on e4 back, which just should be complete equality. After, say, something like queen to e2, we could even just play queen e2, king d8, and we have a totally dead equal position. However, in Popov versus Svidler, Popov tried king f2, which almost led to total disaster. Svidler could have actually won this game. He continued with knight g4, king g3, queen g6, knight h4, and Svidler got a crazy attack against the white king, but right here at this very critical moment, he made the logical continuation move for his attack with the move pawn to f3, which turned out to be a major question mark move because it allowed white to completely equalize. After queen f3 here, they just shook hands because the position is completely dead equal, the pawn structure is totally symmetrical, and the material is exactly the same. However, going back to this position after king g1, black had a great move here. Pause the video and see if you can find it. Okay, this is one of those moments where I seriously doubt you found the move, because it's not some awesome tactical move that you would normally see when somebody says stop and pause the video. It was a safety move. Black could have just played king to d8, which sidestepped all of white's threats. Threats like knight c7, threats like e takes d6, discovered check, etc. And now black simply has a decisive attacking advantage with continuing attacking moves like rook g8, bringing his bishop out, and eventually, yes, f3. So it could have continued something like, say, bishop d2, rook g8, bishop e1, and now f3 exclam is going to end up an advantage black in all situations. After, say, bishop g3 takes, the problem is that it's much easier for black to unwind his pieces than it is for white to unwind his pieces. And on top of that, black is already kind of hanging on to this extra pawn, and he can keep it. So as it turns out, it's very strange, but he ends up kind of hanging on to the extra material here because it's just a little bit easier for him to activate his pieces. This position is actually decisive advantage black. Black should have a decisive advantage in this position. So this was a possibility in Popov versus Fiddler in France in 2011. It didn't happen. Instead, the game just ended in a very peaceful draw. But that's basically what you do when they take the pawn. When they play knight takes e5, you just play queen e7, and these positions are known to be relatively equal. So they could take other stuff. They could play knight takes d4, and this did in fact happen in a recent game after knight takes d4. E takes d4, Magnus Carlsen actually tried this as white against Ding Liren in Azerbaijan in 2018. Now, it's pretty obvious that if you just move the knight away and allow black to capture on e4, this is going to be dead equal. So Carlsen, of course, tried the more testing maneuver here, e5, just trying to go into this cascade of exchanges. But after queen e2, queen just back to e7. This position is laughably equal. They kept playing here. They played all the way to move 27 and then finally shook hands. This is just an equal amount of material. White has some slightly doubled pawns, and that should make white's pawn structure a little bit worse, and obviously white should just be a little bit worse here. I don't know exactly what Carlsen was playing for here, but he did. He played it, and he got a draw, so maybe that's what he wanted. So that was Carlsen versus Ding Liren in Azerbaijan in 2018. So that's another way that white can try to play this after knight d4 is white can just play knight takes d4, and that position should just be completely dead equal. So how else can white play this? Other than the two captures, what else can white do? Well, white can just ignore everything and say, I don't care. And he can kind of play this modern-esque sort of try, where he just says, I don't care about the bishop pair. If you want it, take it, because you're going to be losing tempo if you take this bishop pair. Now, black has two choices here, and I think they're equally good. Black can say, okay, I don't care about the bishop pair either. I care about tempo, so I can just gain a tempo too. You gained a tempo, I'll gain a tempo. You castled, I'm going to play c6. This is going to gain a tempo. And then after, say, bishop d3, you would take, queen takes, and then we would just play d6 and hold the center. Now, what's interesting is this position should be approximately completely equal, but if anybody's better here, it's going to be black. And the reason black is better is it's just super awkward for white to finish this development on the queen side. Black has a solid center. Black has smooth, easy development. Bishop e7, bishop e6, castles kingside, etc. Black's position is simple. And it turned out that that was enough in Andrikin versus Yu Yang Yi in China in 2019. That game went 49 moves and ended in a win for Yu Yang Yi, who was playing the black pieces. So another way you can do this is you can play knight takes b5, and this is my personal kind of preference. If people offer me the bishop pair, typically I take it. And then after knight takes b5, we're going to play c6. We're going to gain that tempo back anyway. The knight retreats, and then we play d6. Now, there is one more critical thing you have to remember here. When they break in the middle with d4, you have to play queen c7, and you have to keep that position closed. Black has very little development in this position. It's really critical to keep it closed. But after you keep that position closed, it's very difficult to find any way for white to even attempt to break open this position or do anything very useful in the next couple of moves. In Nepomniachtchi versus Karyakin in Moscow in 2019, Nepomniachtchi tried a4, and then after bishop e7 tried h3, and then Karyakin castled, and at the very least Karyakin is completely equal. But again, if anybody's better here, it's probably black. Black has a solid center, and he has two bishops. So he has the bishop pair in this position, white doesn't. This position is more than likely completely equal, but if anybody's better, it's black because of that bishop pair. Okay, so going back, we've tried all the captures and we've tried castling. So what are the two main moves here? Well, the two main moves are the two bishop retreats. There's bishop c4 and there's bishop a4. So let's take a look at the first bishop retreat. Let's take a look at bishop to c4. And now what we should really be playing here is bishop c5. Now, if you want to know what modern players are playing here, modern players, there's at least one modern game that has gone castles kingside, d6, just holding the pawn. Knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, d3, bishop e6, and knight e2, and bishop to b6. Now, again, this is one of those positions, I'm going to repeat this a bunch of times. This position should be completely level. There's nothing going on here. But again, maybe if anybody's better, it's black. Black has some slightly better piece placement. Black has the possibility of playing c6 and d5 down the road, but it's a little more difficult for white to play c3 and d4. It's unclear, but it should just be completely equal. But it turned out that the minor things that black had going for him, I don't know. A lot of stuff happened later in the game, but in at least one game, in Artemov versus Vitigov in Russia in 2019, this actually ended in a win for black eventually. So it should be completely equal, but if anybody's better, maybe it's black. Okay, so that's kind of a modern way to play this. The original way that people tried to play this is they went for this gambit. That's one of the reasons they call it the Rubenstein Countergambit, is they would actually go for the gambit part of this, is after bishop to c5, they would go ahead and just take the pawn. Now, the game that I'm following here, we got to go way, way back. This is one of the original games in this line. This is actually, Akiba. This is Bernstein versus Akiba Rubenstein. So this is the guy. This is the guy that made it. So this is Bernstein versus Rubenstein, and this was played in 1912. So this opening is over 109 years old, this game. So what he played here is queen e7, hitting that knight. The knight retreated to f3. It's not clear if there's a better move, but that's what he did. And then d5. And actually, all these moves are pretty close to best practice, even today. So we have d5, bishop to g4. Notice this beautiful theme of having the knight on d4, bishop on g4, hitting this, threatening to double up these pawns. So d3, gaining the tempo, bringing the other knight back to d7, bishop to g5, queen d6, knight back, queen back to g6. He doubles up the pawns. White couldn't afford to castle in this position because he was going to get mated if he did. So then this queen comes to g2, and basically white had to run because he's getting in all kinds of deep trouble. And eventually this ended in a draw after black repeated moves here. But as you can see, black has an amazing attacking position here, and he had an amazing attacking position kind of throughout the game. But he was able to force this perpetual, and I mean, nobody's really improved on this. These guys played really well back in 1912 to come up with all of this stuff without the aid of computers. When I was going over this with my computers, I found very few errors. Certainly nothing to write home about. So we can assume that this position roundabouts should lead to a draw, dead equality, or if anybody's better, probably black. Black has a really good attacking position in these lines. So bishop to c4 is one possibility, and that's how we should respond. If they retreat the bishop to c4, we should just develop with bishop c5, but also if they retreat the bishop to a4, which is an alternative, we should also play bishop c5. So here, again, they can take this pawn. We just go ahead and castle, and now they can... The retreat to d3 is a little bit more appealing now. The bishop is a little bit more out of the way, so there's less of a logjam there. We're going to play bishop to b6, and then e5. And now kind of a very strange move, because this got played recently. And now it seems like when they play e5, we should be retreating this knight to e8. And it seems like maybe after we retreat, like if we play a move like knight e8, knight d5 might actually be advantage white. So maybe white's threaded the needle here and he's getting some sort of advantage. But what's interesting is we don't have to retreat this knight. We can actually play a super aggressive, almost crazy sacrifice here. We can play the move pawn to c6 and just offer up a whole piece seemingly for nothing. And this was actually advantage black in Ivanchuk versus Rajabov in Beijing, China in 2014. Ivanchuk took the piece, and this is the compensation that Rajabov has for it. The only compensation that he has for the piece, because remember, he sacrificed a pawn, then he sacrificed a piece, he got the pawn back. He's down a whole piece. The only compensation that he has for it is that this king is in a very awkward position. We're making some threats against f2. We're going to have a good center with the move pawn to d5, and these pieces on the queen side are going to be completely cut off. So basically what he's doing is he's cutting the board in half. This is a very weird concept. I'm sure he had help with some computer preparation going into this. But b4, d6 was his move. Bishop to b2, he played queen h4. h3, bishop f5 got played. He's getting ready to play bishop takes d3. g4, he did take on d3, c takes d3, and then here he actually makes a mistake according to the engine. He plays the move knight b3 and gets some material back and continued to play good moves and did end up actually winning this game. So Rajabov did go on to win from this position. But what he could have played, and if you don't see why that gets material back, I'll just point it out. The knight is attacking the rook, but we are also threatening mate, so we're going to have to give up the rook. That's the point. He could have just maintained all the threats, though. He could have played the cold-blooded move, which I think is nearly impossible to find maybe without an engine. He could have just played d5. Just put that pawn in the middle of the board and just finish the cutting off of all of white's pieces on this king side. And after d5, rook h2, the computer recommends lifting this rook to e6, and then lifting that rook over to f6. And then after the king runs, because we're threatening rook f2 right now, after the king runs, we're going to play rook f3, and this is supposed to be decisive advantage black. Black actually has a decisive attack right here, as crazy as that sounds. So basically, that's the Rubenstein variation. Those are all of the modern main lines within the Rubenstein variation. Basically, if they retreat the bishop to c4 or a4, we're playing bishop to c5. If they play knight takes e5 right now, we're playing queen e7. If they play knight takes d4, we're going to take, they push, we take, they take, we take, and we have complete equality. If they castle, we can either take the bishop or we can just gain our tempo back with c6, have a solid position and a solid game. That's pretty much it. Knight d4, in theory, is supposed to be, if not the best move, one of the best moves in this position, and it has been known or thought to completely equalize for over 100 years. So I hope that you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, click on your notification icons, and please check out some of my other videos, and I hope you can use these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.